Have you ever wondered if the very thing that feels like abandonment might actually be the clearest sign of divine protection? Tonight, as you lie awake questioning whether heaven even knows your name, something profound is happening in the unseen realm. The silence you've mistaken for absence is actually the sound of eternity preparing your heart for something greater than you ever imagined. You thought the delay meant denial, but what if every unanswered prayer, every closed door, every moment of waiting has been quietly weaving together the most beautiful confirmation that your place in heaven is already secured? There are nights when the weight of uncertainty presses against your chest like a stone. You whisper prayers into the darkness, wondering if anyone is listening. The questions echo in your mind like water drops in an empty well. Am I good enough? Have I done enough? Will I really be welcomed home when this earthly journey ends? These thoughts visit you in the quiet hours when the world sleeps and your soul wrestles with the deepest longings of your heart. You scroll through endless testimonies of others who seem so certain, so confident in their spiritual standing, while you remain caught between hope and doubt. Some nights you feel the warmth of divine presence so clearly it brings tears to your eyes. Other nights, that same presence feels as distant as stars in a cloudy sky. The inconsistency leaves you wondering which version is real, which feeling can be trusted. Would you still believe in divine love if it meant sitting with uncertainty longer than you hoped? Would you still trust the process if the signs weren't dramatic but whispered instead of shouted? Because sometimes the most profound spiritual truths reveal themselves not in moments of ecstasy, but in seasons of quiet endurance, in the patient work of a heart learning to recognize heaven's gentle voice. Maybe that's exactly where the first sign begins to emerge. Maybe the very fact that you question, that you care deeply about your eternal destiny, that you lose sleep over the condition of your soul, is itself evidence of something sacred stirring within you. Not everyone carries this weight. Not everyone feels this pull toward eternity. The restless longing in your chest isn't torment. It's awakening. Sometimes the most beautiful gardens grow in soil that was once broken ground. Sometimes the strongest trees develop their deepest roots during the longest droughts. It could be that your seasons of spiritual uncertainty weren't delays in your journey toward heaven, but the very process of heaven taking root in your heart. The questioning wasn't doubt destroying faith. It was faith deepening into something more mature, more resilient, more real. Consider the gentle transformation happening within you even now. Where once you might have been satisfied with surface answers, now you crave depth. Where once you might have rushed through prayers like grocery lists, now you find yourself sitting in sacred silence, listening for whispers your heart is finally learning to hear. This isn't regression. This is refinement. Maybe that's why the path has felt so winding. Why the answers haven't come wrapped in neat packages with clear labels. Because heaven's been building your heart first, expanding your capacity to carry divine love, not just for yourself, but for a world that desperately needs to see authentic faith lived out in real time. Your uncertainty became the crucible where genuine trust was forged. Here's what the heart knows that the mind often forgets. Our souls were designed for connection with the eternal. But our human experience teaches us to seek immediate validation, quick fixes, and instant confirmation. This creates an internal tension that can feel unbearable. We want to know with absolute certainty, but faith by its very nature requires us to trust beyond what we can see or prove. The beautiful paradox is that this tension isn't a flaw in the system. It's the system working exactly as intended. Faith isn't believing despite the absence of evidence. Faith is learning to recognize evidence that speaks in a different language than our logical minds prefer. It's discovering that peace can coexist with questions, that assurance doesn't require the absence of mystery. Maybe it was never about finding perfect doctrine or flawless theology. Maybe it was about becoming someone whose heart could recognize divine love, even when it arrived wearing work clothes instead of royal robes. Someone who could feel heaven's presence in a gentle breeze just as powerfully as in a mountain-moving miracle. Your mind processes salvation like a contract with terms and conditions, but your spirit experiences it like coming home to a love that was always waiting. The disconnect between these two ways of knowing creates the very uncertainty that drives you to seek deeper understanding. But what if that seeking itself is the sign you've been looking for? Think about the people in your life who radiate authentic peace. They're rarely the ones with all the answers memorized. They're usually the ones who learned to trust the questions, who found comfort in divine mystery, who discovered that heaven's love is less about perfect performance and more about perfect acceptance of imperfect hearts. One day, you'll look back on this season of wondering and see it differently. You'll realize that the nights you spent questioning weren't evidence of weak faith, but of a soul that refused to settle for shallow answers. The uncertainty that felt like punishment was actually the process of your heart expanding to hold more love, more grace, more understanding of what it truly means to belong to eternity. The silence wasn't empty. It was the sound of divine love working beneath the surface, in the hidden places where true transformation happens. It was the sound of heaven making space for you, not because you earned it through perfect belief, but because you were chosen before you ever learned to doubt. If this message reached you at the right time, take it as a quiet sign. Your waiting isn't wasted. Your questions aren't disqualifying. You're being prepared for something sacred that goes beyond what your heart could have imagined. Write Amen in the comments if you receive this message with faith, and subscribe for more reflections like this. Let's keep walking this path of peace and purpose together. Let's keep walking this path of peace and purpose together. The first sign emerges not in grand revelation, but in gentle recognition. You've developed what some call spiritual sensitivity, though you might not have named it yet. It's that stirring you feel when sacred music plays, the way certain scriptures seem to leap from the page and speak directly to your circumstances. It's the unexplained peace that settles over you during prayer, even when your words feel clumsy and inadequate. This sensitivity isn't something you manufactured through discipline or effort. It's something that awakened within you, like morning light gradually illuminating a landscape that was always there. You find yourself drawn to conversations about eternal things, hungry for truth in ways that surprise even you. Where others might scroll past inspirational content, you pause, you reflect, you feel something deeper stirring. Maybe you've noticed how differently you respond to life's storms now. Where once you might have been consumed by anxiety or bitterness, now there's an underlying current of trust, even when everything feels uncertain. This isn't denial or naive optimism. This is evidence of a heart that's learning to recognize divine presence even in difficult seasons. The second sign reveals itself in your changing relationship with forgiveness, not the forced kind that grits its teeth and says the right words, but the kind that flows from a well you didn't know existed within you. You found yourself releasing grudges you once held tightly, not because someone convinced you to, but because carrying them began to feel foreign to who you're becoming. This transformation in your heart toward others reflects something profound happening in your spirit. When divine love takes root, it changes how we see people who've hurt us. We begin to understand that forgiveness isn't about excusing harmful behavior, but about freeing ourselves to love without conditions, to extend grace because we've received it so abundantly. These 7 signs aren't requirements you must earn, but evidence of grace already working within you. Your journey to heaven began the moment your heart first stirred with longing for something eternal. Trust what's happening in your spirit, even when your mind seeks more certainty. You are loved, you are chosen, and your place in eternity is secure.